pay us to think. They pay us to know. We know we can beat them. There's no excuses why we shouldn't. Win the game, period. W's on 3, man. Let's go. W on 3. 1, 2, 3, W.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sister. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report 2019 NFL Draft Preview Special here on the Louie T Network. We're going to talk about a number of things tonight. NFL schedule was released, so we have the Redskins schedule. We'll take a look at that. I already told you we're a double-digit loss football team, and the schedule confirms that as the NFL stuck it to us in the first 5 weeks of the season to make sure that we get off to an ass-cheeks start. Had they given us a chance, maybe San Francisco and Miami in the first 3 weeks, maybe we would have had an outside chance of starting off the season, gaining some confidence, and maybe doing something. We'll get into the schedule. Obviously, we're going to talk draft tonight. I've got a 7-round mock draft for you. I'll give you the players that I think the Redskins are going to select. This is my first time doing this. I generally don't give out 7-round mocks, but I said, what the hell? You know, I've been studying this draft really hard, and I've looked at a lot of these prospects, and I know what the needs are. Why not talk about what I think the Redskins should do over the life of their draft? 9 selections in all. We'll go through each and every single one of them tonight, and we'll get to your comments, talk about what you guys want the Redskins to do, what you think they should do, what you ultimately think they will do, and among other things. Also, let's talk about this, and this is where we'll start the show. All right? Redskins hand out a new contract. New money given out today to a guy that I really think is an unsung hero of this Redskins football team. And a lot of people talk about Payne and they talk about Allen, but to me, Ioannidis is the best pass rusher of all 3 of those guys. And he was extended today on a 3-year, $21 million extension to stay with the Redskins. And I wasn't sure he was going to get new money. I wasn't sure the Redskins saw the value in Matthew Ioannidis. I wasn't sure that they were going to make the right decision. I thought they were going to allow him to become a free agent. And then he was going to go out there. And you never really know just how much your stuff is valued until you allow it hit the streets, like they did with Preston Smith. I don't think they wanted Preston Smith back anyway. But again, you never know how much your stuff is valued until you let it hit the streets. And that's when you find out, damn, a lot of people like our stuff. And so I'm glad they didn't allow it to get to that point with Matthew Ioannidis. He'll be back in the fold for the next 3-4 years or so in DC with the Burgundy and Gold, where he belongs. Homegrown talent. The guy that can get to the quarterback when healthy. Really like what he brings to the table. Glad he's going to be around for years to come. So that's the first order of business tonight. The schedule was released, and we'll get into the schedule. Just want to check some comments to make sure that everyone's here and see what you guys have to say before we jump into the live stream. Make sure you use the hashtag Louie T Live to have your comment read on the air if it's pertinent, if you want to address it to me. So, the 20th Mike says, what's good, Louie? How's the last 4 months been for you, bro? That schedule looking real tough, back-to-back playoff caliber teams. Oh, snap. So, I talked about the schedule at the beginning of the show, at the top of the show, how the NFL didn't do us any favors, and they treated us like they're supposed to treat a potential double-digit loss outfit. We got 2 primetime matchups this year, and honestly, I thought we were only going to get the one token Thursday night that every team is supposed to get around the league, but they did us one better, and they said, we'll throw you an obligatory Monday Night Football game against the Chicago Bears in week number 2. I could have done without it because we stink on primetime television at the crib, as we all know, but what the hell? We'll see what happens there. Anyway, Gregory Lightbody says, what do you think about the rumors of the Redskins trading up for Dwayne Haskins? The Redskins are going to be rumored to do a lot of things, especially surrounding the quarterback position. I think when it's all said and done, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into my thought process. And this is a little bit of a what you would call a spoiler alert. I don't think the Redskins are going to come away with a quarterback during this draft process. I believe they should. You know how I feel. I feel like they should, and whether that's Rosen or Drew Lock, I feel like they should come away with the quarterback, but I don't think they will. Now, Dan Snyder, and this is the wild card. Dan Snyder, I think he wants a quarterback. He wants something he can sell to the fan base. You can't sell Case Keenum to the fan base. You can't sell Colt McCoy to the fan base. Jay Gruden, on the other hand, is saying, look, I don't need a rookie quarterback. That's going to get me fired in 2019. I want to just focus on the veterans that I have. I want to improve this roster and give me the best chance to keep my job and save my hide in 2019. And so there are a number of different point of views and perspectives from which to look at the Redskins roster. If you ask Gruden, he doesn't want a young quarterback. He wants to fill this roster with as much talent as he can to give himself a chance to win as many games and potentially save his job. You ask Daniel Snyder, look, we may not win a lot of games. We may go up and smoke this season, but at least let's do it selling tickets. And the way you do that is with a young quarterback. And so I think if Daniel Snyder has his way, the Redskins will make a move, but Bruce Allen tends to have the final say if Daniel keeps his nose out of the affairs. And Bruce isn't trying to give up draft picks. Bruce isn't trying to mortgage the future. You know how Bruce operates, and if Bruce Allen is in control, I don't see the Redskins moving anywhere other than back and collecting more picks. They're not moving up, I do not think. But again, if Daniel Snyder tells Bruce, to hell with what you're talking about, I want a QB, then Haskins could be in play. And remember, this shouldn't matter and this shouldn't make one bit of difference, but Dwayne Haskins is friends with Daniel Snyder's son. And they went to high school together. Again, for what that's worth, I don't really think that should make any bit of difference. If you want Haskins, I think you're going to have to go up. I don't know how far, because at first I had Haskins pegged to the Giants at 6. I don't think the Giants are taking a quarterback at 6. I don't. And so that kind of changes my perspective. I think the Giants are going to take an edge rusher at 6, and then they're going to go and get the quarterback that they so choose at 17. If Daniel Jones is still there, I think that's the guy that they want, and I think they want him at 17, and I think they're going to go after the edge rusher at 6. So a guy like Haskins could fall a little bit, could slide, but I don't think he's getting past Cincinnati at 11. He could easily come off the board at Denver at 10. I mean, Miami could easily say, to hell with tanking for Tua, let's take him at 13. So there are a number of scenarios. I can assure you of this. 3 quarterbacks are coming off the board before 15. And I don't know the order other than Kyler Murray is going number 1. I don't know if Lock's going to go at 10 to Denver, or if he's going to go at 6 to the Giants, or if he's going to go somewhere else earlier in the draft. But he's going before 15. Same can be said for Dwayne Haskins. Those 3 quarterbacks won't be available at 15, but Daniel Jones will. And I'm hoping the Redskins don't have a hard-on for him, because I'm not a Daniel Jones fan. So there's that. Anyway, moving right along, let's see what else comments we have before we get to the schedule. And Atlas says, Lou, if Bruce Allen is gone and you're the GM on draft day, what does your big board look like for the Skins? As a non-Skins fan, I think DK would be good and a good pickup, and you can pick up a quarterback next year. I am not a DK Metcalf fan. So obviously if you want DK Metcalf, you're going to spend your first round pick. I don't even think he'll be there at 15. He could be there at 15. It's interesting with the receiver position, because I don't think the receiver position is going to be overdrafted necessarily this year. Whereas in past years, we've seen the overdrafted receiver with a John Ross, or even a Corey Davis, who went in the top 7. I believe he was 7th overall. Even though he looks like he's about to explode and burst onto the scene and be the guy that the Titans selected in the top 10, he was slightly overdrafted in my estimation. In any event, I don't think you're going to see that this year necessarily, but I could be wrong, and a team could take DK in the top 15 picks. I just hope the Redskins don't have a hard-on for him either, because, again, I think the Redskins do like him. I think they do understand that they have a need at receiver, but there are other pressing needs on this football team other than wide receiver, and so I hope that he's not the selection at 15. But if I put on my GM hat, you know what I want to do first. I want to attack the quarterback position because it's the most important position. But if the guy, and I only want one guy because Kyler Murray isn't going to be there at 15, and I'm not trading up for Kyler Murray. So if Drew Lock isn't there at 15, then I'm not getting the guy that I want, and I don't feel like moving up is the thing to do here. And so I would then turn my attention to the defensive side of the football. That's where I think if you're going to have a chance to win, if you're the Redskins, you're not going to win on offense. This offense, this team is not built to win on offense as it's constructed. I don't care what we do in the draft this year. Our strong suit isn't going to be offensive football. It's going to be on the defense. If we're going to win, it's going to look a lot like it did early last season before Alex Smith got injured. And I know a lot of you weren't a fan of winning games 19-13 and winning games 16-3, forcing 5 turnovers and looking a mess on offense. But that may be how we have to win. That may be the antidote for the Redskins if you're going to win football games. And the way to do that is to get after the other team defensively. I think the Redskins understand that. And I think if the Redskins feel like they're close, as Bruce Allen keeps telling us, we're close, then what we're close to is actually having a dominant defense. That's the closest thing we're to right now. And if you're going to get over the hump, you need to be able to get after the quarterback. And I think that's why defense needs to be the Redskins' first choice in this draft. If I were putting on my draft and GM hat. So, Just Andre says, if the Skins don't get a first-round QB, I like Tyree Jackson in the third. He says, and how do you feel about Tyree Jackson? He's a project. He's developmental. You don't spend a third-round pick, for me, all right, on a Tyree Jackson. Not where the Redskins are. You don't spend a third-round pick on a developmental quarterback that I think is going to be a long shot to be ready in say, 2 years. I'm not a huge Tyree Jackson fan. I think he's got a lot of things he's got to clean up. There's a lot of intangibles there. A lot of things you can't teach. Size, obviously. Arm strength. He's got a cannon. He's a good athlete. There's a lot of things to like. There's a lot of things not to like with Tyree Jackson. He's got a long, elongated delivery. He doesn't read the field well yet. He's got a lot to learn in terms of getting to the check down and getting through progressions quickly. Sometimes he can be quick to get out of the pocket and use his legs and not standing there. He got better at that as his career progressed. But again, there's a lot of growing pains with a young quarterback that essentially played. And he played in more of a pro-style offense. So that's also something that you get with Tyree Jackson. But again, I just think he's got a long way to go. Redskins aren't in a position to draft. For me, the Redskins need a quarterback, if they're going to take one, that's going to need just slight tweaks here and there, but be ready to go. If, say, the Redskins start off the season 1-5, 1-7, and you say, to hell with it, put the young guy in, Tyree Jackson wouldn't be ready in that situation. You need a guy that would be ready in that instance. And so when you talk about developmental quarterbacks, I don't trust anybody on this staff to develop a quarterback. Jay Gruden has already said, look, I'm not in the business right now of developing a quarterback because I'm trying to save my job, essentially. And so if you've got a young quarterback, he needs reps. You can't give reps to a young quarterback when you're trying to get your starting quarterback ready for the upcoming game. It doesn't work. So I just don't see the Redskins taking a developmental quarterback. If they're going to take a quarterback, it's going to be early in the first 2 rounds. If they don't take a quarterback within the first 2 rounds, I don't see them taking a quarterback at all in this draft. I just don't. So there's that. But we'll see what happens. John Saluter says, is 15 too early for wide receiver? The only one I'd want is N'Keal Harry. 15 would be probably a little early for him. But again, you know my mantra, you know my motto. Get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. And if 15 is where you feel like you need to strike while the iron is hot to get your receiver, so be it. I think there's going to be a run on receivers in the late teens to early 20s. And so I think that's right outside of where the Redskins are going to be looking and teams are going to be looking for a receiver. I think right around the Packers is where you could see like a DK Metcalf potentially come off the board. And that's when I think you'll see the run on receivers start. Once that first guy gets selected, then everyone else is going to say, hey, we better go get our guy before he's gone. And so I think that happens towards the middle portion to the back end of the first round. think it's a little early for N'Keal in the first round. But again, if that's who the Redskins target and peg is their guy, I would not have a problem with it whatsoever. Not at all. So let's get to the schedule as I've gotten through the vast majority of the comments. So let's get to the Redskins schedule. It was released. And look, I look at the Redskins schedule and I think that this is going to be a very interesting season, to say the least. The Redskins schedule doesn't give them a great shot. Now, it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to stink because of this schedule. Again, I told you the schedule game is so hard to play because you really don't know how good these teams are going to be. We always base our thoughts of these teams off of what they did the previous season. But as we all know, in the NFL, there are going to be at least 4, possibly upwards of 6 new teams in the postseason. It happens every year. There's turnover in the NFL playoffs. That means teams that were good last year aren't going to be good this year, and teams that weren't good last year are going to be good this year. So again, I don't want to put too much stock into looking at the schedule, counting up wins and losses. That's not my thing. However, you look at certain teams and you expect them to be good. We know about family business and what that means, and we've got a ton of family business to conduct in the first 4 weeks of the season. This is a stark contrast to last year's schedule. Remember, we didn't see an NFC East foe until like week 7 last year. All right, we stayed away from divisional opponents. We didn't see one NFC East game until I believe Cowboys week 7 at the crib was the first time we tackled an NFC East opponent last year. This year, we come right out of the box, right out of the gate, jumping into some NFC East family business. And the fun doesn't stop there. Week 2, we jump into more family business. And then week 4, it's more family business. And we take on each of the 3 teams in our division at least once in the first 4 weeks of the season. So they didn't play around with our divisional games this year. And so let's take a look at this schedule. We start week 1 on the road versus Philly. I remember once upon a time when I wasn't afraid to go to Philly. I thought that was a very winnable game every single year. Now Philadelphia has become a house of horrors for us. We struggle with Philadelphia. And it's not because we can't beat Philadelphia. It's just because we generally make mistakes when we go to Philadelphia. We turn it over. And generally, something goes awry when we go to Philadelphia. Injuries, backup quarterback, whatever the case may be. We hang tough for a little while, and then they run away from us in the football game. It's happened 2 years in a row now. And so I don't see week 1 being any different this year. I don't know if Carson Wentz is going to be fully healthy. I expect him to be, but nonetheless, I can't see us winning that game. Week 2 at home versus the Cowboys, that's a winnable football game. Absolutely. It's family business. It's a rivalry game. Anything goes. That's definitely a winnable game. I don't think we're going to win, but that's a winnable football game. The Bears on Monday Night Football, week 3. Again, winnable football game. The Bears are no world beaters, but do you really expect to go and beat the Bears on Monday Night Football at home? I mean, do you really feel like the Redskins are up to the task? Maybe, maybe not. Week 4 at the Giants. At New York has been a house of horrors for us. We generally don't win there. We won there last year. It wasn't pretty, but we got it done. Don't count on us going to New York and winning, though. I don't know if that's something you should feel confident about. They're not that good either, and they're in somewhat of a rebuild mode, but they're still better than us. So I don't know if that's a winnable football game or not. Week 5, we're going to get our asses handed to us. New England's coming to town, and sans for Tom Brady not playing for some undisclosed reason, we're going to get destroyed in that football game. So week 6 is the first game that I look at and say, hey, we really should have a good shot at winning. Now, again, I've heard a lot of people say 0-5 right out the gate. I don't see us going 0-5. We're going to win at least 1, possibly 2 of those games. All right. We're going to win at least 1 game in the first 5. But the Dolphins game, if we can't beat the Dolphins, all right, if we can't beat the Dolphins at the crib, then on the road. Home, away, it doesn't matter. If we can't beat Miami, we're probably going to be really bad this year. Like 4-12, 5-11 bad. I've got us at 6-10. All right, 7-9, somewhere in there. You can't beat Miami. You're probably going to be 5-11, 4-12 this year. San Francisco at the crib. I don't know what the 49ers are going to be. So that's a tough one to decipher because I think Kyle Shanahan is building a bully out there, and they just need to stay healthy. Last year, they were decimated by injuries. They're going to be a lot healthier this year. They've made some more shrewd moves in the offseason. They're going to have another draft under their belt. That's a scary game there. That's one that we could easily lose, but that's another one that we could easily win. They're coming to the East Coast. It's a West Coast team playing at 1 o'clock. That's a game that they could easily lose. Vikings, that's the Kirk Cousins game, obviously, and they put it on prime time. That's a Thursday nighter. That's the second and final primetime game for the Redskins in 2019. That's going to be a lot of fun because, the build-up and the hoopla surrounding that game is going to be centered around Kirk Cousins playing against his former team. I don't know how good the Vikings are going to be, but I expect them to be a formidable team in 2019. And if they are, we're going to Minnesota. That's going to be a tough ask of a Redskins football team that, frankly, I don't think is going to be good enough to get it done on the road against a quality defensive football team. The Bills on the road in Week 9, again, winnable football game, but how good are the Bills? They've revamped their roster this year, and so they're going to look vastly different than the team we saw struggle on offense and relied on their quarterback to rush for over 100 yards every single week. They're going to be a different team, a different animal to deal with this year, and that could easily turn into a loss. That could easily be a win. We'll see what the Bills look like by the time we get to week number 9. Then we have a week 10 bye. It could be ugly for the Redskins to the point where Jay Gruden is fired at week 10. I was hoping the bye would be a little bit sooner this year. Normally, I despise early season byes, but I said to myself, if Jay wants to remain head coach this year, if things turn south, you need an early season bye. If the Redskins start 0-3 and we got a week 4 bye, I don't think he gets fired there. But if the Redskins start 1-8 and we go into week 10's bye at 1-8, Jay Gruden is going to get fired. And so, and there's generally nothing good that comes of firing your coach in season. But hey, with the way this schedule looks and how things could shake out, winning begets confidence. Confidence begets winning. If we're not winning, we lose confidence. It could get ugly. So we'll see what happens with this team and what we look like going into the Week 10 bye. We come off the bye, 2 straight home games that are very winnable. Jets at the crib. That's a revamped football team. They've got L.Bell on their roster now. Sam Darnold will be in year number 2. They've got a new head coach in Adam Gase. That's going to be a different outfit this year. They've got new jerseys, so that always helps. Look good, play good, all of that stuff. So the Jets could be a tough game, but that's a game you could win at the crib. Same could be said for Week 12 at home versus Detroit. Very winnable football game. I don't know what the Lions are going to be. The Lions look like one of the worst teams in football. They're in the same boat as us in terms of not a lot of hope for the 2019 season. I look at the Lions and I'm saying, you look like a bad football team. Sort of like how I look at around the league and at some of these other teams. And the only difference is they actually have a quarterback. But I just can't explain what's going on in Detroit right now. It just doesn't seem like a lot of hope. But again, they had a first-year head coach. Maybe year 2 is a lot better than year 1 for him. They're getting some of his guys in there. Maybe things start to change in Detroit. They play better. And maybe they're one of those teams that we underestimate going into the season, and they turn out to be a really good team in 2019. Who knows? Maybe the Redskins are one of those teams. We'll see. But that's a winnable game at the crib in week number 12. Week 13 at Carolina. If Cam Newton's healthy, that's a loss. We struggle with the Panthers, especially in Carolina. I don't think we've beaten the Panthers in Carolina since Cam Newton has come on board. As a matter of fact, we hadn't beaten Cam Newton home or away since he got into the league until last year when we were able to take them down early in the season. We go to Carolina, we usually struggle. And not only do we usually struggle, we usually get our asses handed to us in Kakalaki. So I don't like that matchup for us. But if Cam Newton's not healthy, all bets are off. Green Bay on the road. I can't tell you the last time we won in Lambeau. We don't win in Lambeau. I don't like our chances in Lambeau. I love playing the Packers at home. I told you last year, before the season started, we're going to beat the Packers in week 3. What did we do? We beat the Packers in week 3. Why was I confident? Because we always beat the Packers at the crib. Remember Kirk Cousins' monster performance on a Sunday night, outdueling Aaron Rodgers in a game where the Redskins scored damn near 40 points, and we were all excited, thought we were going to go to the playoffs after that triumphant victory. We play well against the Packers at home. We don't play well against them on the road at Lambeau. I don't like our chances in week 14. Week 15, the Eagles come to FedEx. That might be another road game like it was last year in week 17. If we're at that point of the season 4-9, that's going to be an Eagles home game at FedEx Field like it was last year. I don't like the spot for us. I don't know where the Eagles are going to be. Are the Eagles going to be any good at that point? Who knows? It could be 2 bad teams. It could be 2 teams battling for wild card position. It could be 2 teams battling for NFC East supremacy. Who knows at that point of the season? All I know is the Eagles are tough, period. And we struggle with the Eagles. That's going to be a tough ask in week number 15. Home again in the division in week number 16, this time against the Giants. The last time the Giants came to our stadium in week number, was it 16 last year too? No, it was week, I think it was week 14. No, it was week 16 because we lost to the Titans. It was week number 15? No, it wasn't. It was week 13 because we went to Jacksonville 1-14, had a chance against the Titans to keep our season alive in 15. That didn't work. So it was week 14 because we went to Jacksonville in 15. We went to Tennessee in week 16, and then we lost to the Eagles in week 17. So last time they came to our building late in the season, they destroyed us in the first half to the point where I got on live of that game at halftime and said, everybody needs to go. We need to clean house. Obviously, that did not happen. Week 17 at the Dallas Cowboys. Who knows with that game? The Cowboys could be playing for everything. They could be playing for nothing at that point. Same could be said for the Redskins. They could be playing for everything. They could be playing for nothing. But it's the Cowboys. You'd like to get that one. Whether they need it or they don't, whether we need it or we don't, I just want to beat the Cowboys. Period. End of discussion. That's week 17. And that's on the road at Big D. And so that's what the schedule looks like. We've got 2 primetime games, week 3 at home versus Chicago on a Monday night. And week number 8 at Minnesota on a Thursday night. And so the schedule makers told you how they feel about the Redskins with just the 2 primetime games. They don't think very much of us, and for good reason. We are a football team right now that I look at and say we've got a lot of work to do to be competitive in 2019. So that's the way the schedule looks. All right, let's get to some more of your comments. And let's see if there are any more comments to be had. And let's see if I'm missing anything. And let's see. Scroll through these comments and see what we got. Before I get to my Redskins mock, let's get to some more comments. And I see the comment section is heating up. All right. Mo L says, what's more likely, trade for Rosen or move up to get Haskins? If you ask me, the trade for Rosen would be more likely than moving up for Haskins. Here's why I feel this way. I don't think Bruce Allen wants to trade up and give up draft capital. Bruce Allen has been really shrewd. You say what you want about Bruce, and I, just like the next man, can't stand Bruce as a general manager or team president. That being said, Bruce hasn't given away draft picks. He's been really smart with draft picks. He's only given them up when forced to give them up, i.e. the Alex Smith trade. He hasn't really given up draft picks. He hasn't moved up to draft players. He's moved back to acquire more picks, but moving up hasn't been his style. This could be different because you're talking quarterback. Anytime you're talking quarterback, the game changes. But I don't see the Redskins moving up for Haskins. What I see, though, is them potentially saying, hey, and they wouldn't say this. I'll say this. We don't do a good job of spending second-round picks. So we'll give you our second-round pick in 2019. We'll also slide you an additional third in 2020. And we'll also send you a fifth-rounder, one of our 2 fifth-rounders in 2019. And that should net us Josh Rosen. That's a possibility. Another possibility could be, hey, we'll give you 15, you give us 33, and Josh Rosen, and we'll call it even. I don't see the Redskins doing that. I don't think they want to move out of 15, but that's also another scenario. But to answer your question, I think it's more plausible that the Redskins go after Rosen than it is them trading up for any quarterback in this draft not named Kyler Murray. Let's see. JP says, the 2 things that would make me upset are taking Daniel Jones and an offensive lineman at 15. He says, if they do that, I'm going to shit on Bruce's desk. Hey, look, man. I don't think they're going to take an offensive lineman at 15. Daniel Jones is in play. It would really make me sick to my stomach as well. But after last year's draft and watching the Redskins do something, and again, I don't want to go down this road with you guys. I like Daron Payne. I don't love Daron Payne. I think he's going to be a really good football player. There were other guys that I thought could have helped, but it wouldn't shock me if they did something that I disapproved of, because they generally do things that I disapprove of. So Daniel Jones wouldn't shock me at 15. He really wouldn't, honestly speaking. DMV fan 123 says, my skin's big board. Number 1, Brian Burns. Number 2, TJ Hawkinson. Number 2, I guess he's got 2 tied at number 2. He's also got Marquise Hollywood Brown. He's got Montez Sweat at 4. He's got Cleveland Farrell at 5. He says, and that's if we have Josh Rosen. That's his top 6 guys on his board for the Redskins at number 15. I can tell you this much. Montez Sweat will not be available. Of those guys on that list, neither will TJ Hawkinson. Both of those guys will be gone by the 15th selection, I believe. All right. For sure, Montez Sweat is gone. He's not going to be around. He's going to 6 to the Giants. All right. Because I think Bosa's going to be gone. I think Josh Allen's going to be gone. And the Giants are going to sit there and say, you know what? Let's get our guy now. And they're going to take Montez Sweat at number 6. So DC Big Oso Yeah says, with an NFL schedule like the one we have, we better go heavy on defense so we can at least be in some of those games, if not steal a few of them. I couldn't agree with you more. If you're going to be competitive in 2019, you're going to have to do it on the defensive side of the football. I said that at the beginning of the show. That's the way the Redskins are going to compete. It's going to have to look a lot like it did early in 2018 when the Redskins were ultra competitive on the defensive side of the football. They were stopping the run. They were forcing turnovers. That's how the Redskins were winning, and they were running the football. That's going to have to be duplicated in 2019 if they're going to have a chance to win, or at least, as DC Oso said, be in ball games early in the season, because the schedule is brutal to start. Atlas John Perez says, Brian Burns at 15, please. Atlas says, my guess, if Bruce will see Haskins get past New York, then he looks to trade up. I think in order for the Redskins to be in a position to trade up, if they're going to do it, I think quarterbacks have to fall to 10 to the Denver Broncos spot. And I think the Broncos are intrigued by taking a potential quarterback. Joe Flacco has come out. Joe Flacco, my guy, Joe, has come out and basically said, don't draft a quarterback. I'm here. All right. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder. Let's get as many talented football players on this roster to help us win now. I got this. You don't need another quarterback. I got it. I don't know if they're going to listen to Joe, but if the Broncos are listening to Joe, then at 10, that could become a hot spot for a potential quarterback in a trade. So, again, we'll see. Maybe the pick before Denver at 10, maybe 9 becomes a hot spot for the Redskins, or any team for that matter, looking to draft a quarterback, because maybe you're afraid of Denver taking a quarterback at 10 that you may like. And so maybe you got to get in front of them to get your guy. Who's to say? But John Perez also says, would you be opposed to taking Clelin Ferrell at 15? I've had some people tell me he's a Ryan Kerrigan clone. Yes, I'd be against taking him at 15. There's a lot of issues with him right now. He hasn't run a 40. A lot of people think he's not going to test very well. He didn't test well at the combine. He's been dealing with a myriad of injuries. I don't think he's an explosive pass rusher. I do think he's a guy that is crafty and finds ways to get to the quarterback, but he's not what we're looking for. We're looking for explosion off the edge. We're not looking for another Ryan Kerrigan. We're not looking for another Preston Smith. We're not looking for another Ryan Anderson. We want speed off the edge. That's not what Clelin Ferrell is. So I'm good on him. I got Munson says, what did you think of that freak Charlie Casserly saying that we would take Jones at 15? I like him, and he's grown on me a bit, but that's ridiculous. First of all, don't talk about Charlie that way. Charlie's a good guy, all right? Charlie's family. Once family, always family. If you leave on good terms, Charlie is family, all right? Charlie helped us win a Super Bowl. Don't talk about Uncle Charlie that way. That being said, look, Uncle Charlie likes Daniel Jones. I don't. You don't, okay? Look, if he likes Daniel Jones, thinks highly of him, then he thinks he's capable of being an NFL starter and a really good one, then maybe he thinks the Redskins should pull the trigger at 15. That's his opinion. That's the beauty of the draft. We all got opinions. We're all GMs this time of the year. He used to be a GM. And so he feels like Daniel Jones is a good quarterback prospect. I don't think he's a great prospect, especially at 15. So we disagree on that with him. We both are in agreement that Daniel Jones isn't a great fit at 15 for the Skins. But if that's how Charlie feels, that's how Charlie feels. Make sure you're using the hashtag LouieTLive. And make sure you spell it right so I can see it. And don't make me work harder than I need to, okay, guys? Farrah Cody says, we're going to be better than people think, and I think we can get Locke in the second round. All right, so let's take this one at a time. You think we're going to be better than a lot of people perceive us to be? Bless your heart, okay? I don't see it, but I'm not one. Look, who am I to rain on your parade? Who am I to shoot down your dreams, all right? That's why they're dreams, all right? I don't think we're going to be very good, but if you think we're going to be very good, more power to you. Secondly, Drew Lock is not going to be around in the second round. I think you're trolling me at this point. He's not even going to make it to 15 to the Redskins, let alone the second round. Matthew123 says, I feel like 80% certain that we will trade for Rosen, especially after hearing what Rosen said on Sports Illustrated. What did he say? I missed that comment. I did hear him say, and I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but I heard him say that it's annoying at this point with all the rumors. He just wants resolution. He wants to know where his future lies. I don't know. First of all, we don't even know if Josh Rosen wants to play for the Redskins. Like, we assume that Rosen is open to going anywhere because he didn't have a say-so in the matter, but he does kind of have a say-so in the matter. Look at Antonio Brown's situation with the Steelers. There was a trade in place with the Buffalo Bills that was probably going to net the Steelers a first-round selection, something that they ultimately did not receive in return for Antonio Brown in the compensation package from the Raiders. They had a deal in place. What happened to that deal, you ask? Antonio Brown opened his mouth and said, I'm not playing for the damn Bills. Well, if I'm trading for a guy, the last thing I want to hear out of that guy's mouth is I don't want to play for the team that's trying to trade for me. So if that guy doesn't want to play for my organization, I don't want him to play for my organization. It's really simple. So if Josh Rosen says the Redskins are a train wreck, the Redskins are an organization that I can't get behind, and he doesn't want to play for this organization, then we don't want him here. They don't want him here. So that's also something you have to take into consideration. But I'd like to know what he said on Sports Illustrated. If you could leave that in the comment section, that'd be greatly appreciated. The 20th Mike says, Redskins just signed AAF player Josh Woodrum. Really never paid attention to the AAF. Is he tough? I guess. I mean, I didn't watch it a ton either. I watched it a couple of times, but I can't tell you who Josh Woodrum is from Adam from Eve. So I can't help you in that regard. John Perez says, a good second round pick would be a receiver like Paris Campbell or Emmanuel Hall, both speedsters. I think speed is something that Jay Gruden and the Redskins really are going to covet in this draft, as you will see when I display my 7-round mock draft. But I think that the speed element is something that they felt like they lacked. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we get into my selections. Gio Bove says, I'm a diehard Redskins fan, and I hope to God we get N'Keal Harry. I would not be upset. You're not wrong for wanting N'Keal Harry. If you haven't checked out my podcast, what the hell are you waiting on? Louie T Network podcast. I've given out my rankings for all of the offensive skill positions. N'Keal Harry is on that list. Check out the podcast, Louie T Network podcast, available on Google Music Play, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, and of course the website louietnetwork.net. Ali Side says, Lou, where's the podcast this week? Don't be to rush. He says, I need it. I got 2 episodes coming at you tomorrow. So don't fear, the podcast is going to be here shortly. 2 episodes coming. I had a big interview with my man, Jason Reed. So it's going to be 2 great episodes coming your way. Melvin Glossen says, we have a history of screwing things up. With that being said, I hope we don't blow our opportunity to do something spectacular in the first and second rounds. We don't do a good job in the second round, but I'm with you. We always find a way to royally screw ourselves. We haven't done that the last couple of years. All right, we didn't wet the bed last year with the pick of Daron Payne. All right, contrary to popular belief, me being a guy that was vehemently against the pick, we didn't wet the bed last year. He's a good football player. I just thought there were other guys available that would have helped, maybe in a more dominant capacity. But Daron Payne's a good football player. So is Jonathan Allen. We haven't wet the bed in the first round the last couple of years. It's been after the first round where we could be a little sketchy. So we'll see what happens. John Perez says, I'm like you, Lou. If Drew Lock is there at 15, we have to take him. But Haskins has a ton of upside, and I believe he can be something special. I think Haskins can be something special too. I'm not the biggest Dwayne Haskins fan, but I do think the guy is talented, and I think it's limited experience at Ohio State, so the upside is tremendous. I don't have a problem with the Redskins drafting Haskins if that's the quarterback that they covet. I don't want them trading up to get Haskins, but if he's there at 15, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Let's see. On the Warpath says, from the quarterback he says, from the quarterback class, this draft seems similar to the 2011 draft. Don't say that. Don't say, well, especially if we're getting a guy, don't say that. Because remember, in that draft class, there was only one quarterback that was any good, and that was Cam Newton. The rest of those guys were pure ass cheeks. There was Blaine, was Blaine Gabbert in that draft? Yes, because that was the draft we got Kerrigan. We traded back with Jacksonville to allow them to come up to get Blaine Gabbert. There was Christian Ponder in that draft. There was Jake Locker in that draft. Don't do that on the Warpath. Don't say that, because we need a quarterback. So if we get a quarterback, we're going to be one of those teams drafting one of those ass cheek quarterbacks if this draft turns out to look anything like 2011. But on the flip side, if this draft is anything like 2011 from a non-quarterback perspective in the first round, there are going to be potentially, I talked about this on my podcast about 3 months ago. There are going to be upwards of 6 potential Hall of Fame first round picks in that draft. I think 7 if you add Dick Sherman in the 5th round of that draft. 7 Hall of Fame players from that draft. 6 in the first round alone. That draft was outstanding if you take out the quarterbacks. Cam Newton. All but Cam Newton. So, yeah. Let's see. Halim Tonic says, all this talk about quarterback, if Kyler Murray doesn't get picked first, then a lot of people will fall, such as Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, etc., etc. I don't see a scenario in which Kyler Murray doesn't go number 1 overall. You know how I feel about that situation. I've said it long time ago, made a video saying Kyler Murray is going to be selected by the Arizona Cardinals. When they hired Cliff Kingsbury, they hired him with the understanding that they needed to draft Kyler Murray. That's my thought process. If you're going to hire a guy that got fired in college, then you better have a plan. That plan includes Kyler Murray. But you're right. Shit could go really crazy. Like, you want to turn this draft upside down on its head? Have Kyler Murray not go number 1 overall. Everything goes to hell in a handbasket at that point. This draft is already really tough to decipher as it is. Let Murray not go 1, and all hell breaks loose. J. Camman says the Redskins play the Bills in Buffalo for the first time in 16 years. The last time the Redskins were supposed to play the Bills in Buffalo, the game was actually in Toronto. Boy, I remember that game because that was a thorough ass whooping. We got blanked. John Beck was the quarterback. It was a mess. It was one of the worst games I've watched the Redskins play in the last 15 years. It was, and we've had some stinkers. That was one of the worst games. That one up in Toronto. He says, for the first time in 16 years, since Bruce Smith was on the Redskins, are you going to make the trip to watch the game? We got Niagara Falls. I'm good. I've said, and even though the game is in Buffalo, because one of my buddies asked me, was I trying to go to a Redskins game? And I said, I'm not supporting Daniel Snyder. You know my stance. I told you, my contribution to the movement is I won't put 1 red cent in the pocket of Daniel Snyder until change. 2 things. One of 2 things has to take place. Change must be made, and you know what change I'm talking about, or we must win and win big. If one of those 2 things doesn't happen, I'm not putting 1 red cent in Daniel Snyder's pocket. We Hauling It says, my dream scenario would be if the Skins trade back, take A.J. Brown in the first, Ja'Kai Polite or whatever is left at guard at the 15th pick of the 2nd round. That would be one hell of a dream for sure, to get a good receiver like A.J. Brown, then turn around, get us a pass rusher or a dominant guard. I'd say that'd be a great 1-2 combination for the Redskins in the first 2 rounds. And you'd pick up some kind of compensation for moving back. Hopefully, presumably another 2nd round pick, because if you're moving back in the 1st round, you're going to probably net a 2nd rounder depending on how far back you're moving, or a 3rd. Either way, you'd be picking up additional draft capital that could help you net another good football player in this year's draft. I wouldn't have a problem with that either. John Perez says, Bears versus Redskins on Monday night is going to be a slugfest because of the defenses. I'm kind of anxious to play Kirk Cousins and the Vikings in Minnesota on Thursday night. That game's going to be hot. Hopefully the Redskins aren't awful by then. Hopefully that game has buzz for all of the right reasons and not because of just Kirk Cousins playing against his ex-team. But let's hope that the Redskins at that point aren't just absolute trash. Let's hope that they're at least 3-4 going into that game with a chance to get back to 500. That'd be a story in itself. Or maybe even 4-3 with a chance to get to 5-3 on the season. Let's hope that that's the case and not the case that we stink and the only thing that we have going for us in that game is to try to beat Kirk Cousins. Let's see. All right. Trying to go back up. All right, just Andre says, I can see the Skins starting 1-4, but I hope I'm wrong. I'm with you. I think 1-4 is very plausible with the way our schedule is set up. Farrah Cody says, you have no faith in our team, shaking my head. Look, I just call it how I see it. I don't sugarcoat. I'm not one of these guys with rose-colored glasses on that, sing the praises of the Redskins and they can do no wrong. That's not me. If you're looking for that, you've come to the wrong place. I'm a realist when it comes to my football team. I just am. That's how I'm wired, and that's how I am. John Perez says, I'm looking to attend the Giants game at MetLife with my lady since I live in New Jersey. I'd love to hear from you if you go, man. I'd love for you to report what's there and talk about that if you ultimately do decide to go in week number 4. Ali Side says, you doing a mock draft contest this year? Nah, I wanted to. It's just too late in the game. I haven't advertised it. I haven't put it out there early enough. Hell, I haven't even put out a mock my damn self, so I'll save that for next year. JP says, reports are that the Skins really want Haskins per Daniel Jeremiah. It wouldn't shock me if the Redskins were really interested. I think they want a quarterback. And right now, I don't have them getting a quarterback in this draft, But I really think Daniel Snyder wants to come away with the quarterback badly. And where he really wants Murray. I don't think he's going to be able to get his hands on him. And I think Haskins may be the next guy in line that he really covets. And remember, Haskins is a hometown guy. He's from the DMV area. A lot of people were upset at him because he scorned Maryland to go to Ohio State, which was a dream of his. So he's still from the DMV area, and I think they would love nothing more than to bring the home product home. So it wouldn't shock me if the Redskins were hot in pursuit of Haskins. He's got to come into their wheelhouse, though. I don't see the Redskins trading up to 5 or the Redskins trading up to 7. I think the Redskins really want him to come into that 9-10 range before they even start really considering trading up for him. John Saluter says, we haven't beat the Packers in Green Bay since Reagan was president. That sounds about right. We don't win in Green Bay, period. So I don't like our chances there. John Perez says, would you be opposed to drafting Michigan linebacker Devin Bush at 15? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have a problem with that. We have more pressing needs than Devin Bush, but if he's best player available at 15, I'm all for it. You can never go wrong by just taking the best player available when you're drafting at number 15. So I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I already told you the only positions I would have a problem with the Redskins selecting in the first round are corner and safety. All right. Any other position, I don't really want a guard, but if they took a guard, okay, fine. If that's the best player on your board, he fits a need, an obvious need this team has, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't want a corner. We have 8 of them on the roster right now. I don't want a corner in the first round. And if you didn't take a corner this entire draft, I'd be perfectly fine with that. And I don't want a safety in the first round. You can get a safety, and I've got one that I'm targeting in the second round. You don't need a safety in the first round. Jose Martin says, do you think the Skins should draft a safety this draft? Yes. And I've got one going in my 7-round mock draft. Atlas says, would you consider Jacob Polite on the Skins draft board in the 3rd or even a 2nd? Absolutely. 2nd round on Jacob Polite is on the radar. Contrary to popular belief, the guy is actually a good football player. I know the combine didn't go well, and there are a lot of question marks surrounding him. I think that he learned a lot from that combine experience, and the guy can play football. Ryan Heath says, if we can get 3 wins in the first 5, then we have a shot. Still can't see it, though. I'm with you. The season will be defined by the first 5 weeks. If we start 0-5, 1-4, our season is done. Dead on arrival. If we somehow get to 2-3 or 3-2 after the first 5 weeks, hey, we got ourselves a chance to be competitive. And you know what I ask for every year going into the season? My standards are low for my football team. They've set the bar extremely low. I only reach for low-hanging fruit when it comes to the Redskins because they've trained me to think this way. So every year I go into the season begging and pleading. Just make November into December football meaningful. All right? That's all I ask for every year. And then we'll go from there. All right? If you can just get me to November and we're still playing meaningful football, you're telling me we have a chance, then all I can ask for is for us to continue to remain competitive, and maybe we make it to December and we're still in the wild card hunt. All right? That's all I look for every year. And then if we're better by the time we get to November, then I heighten my expectations. Then I raise the bar. But going into the season every year, you know me, I ask for the same thing. Just get me to November playing meaningful football. And if we go 2-3 or 3-2 after the first 5 weeks of the season, we got a shot to play meaningful football in November. We go 0-5, 1-4 in the first 5, we're not going to most likely be playing meaningful football in November. I'm with you. John Perez says, LSU corner Greedy Williams at 15 would be another great pick. I'm good. I'm going to pass on that. But thanks. And I know you're an LSU guy and you trust Greedy Williams, and he may ultimately be a shutdown corner in this league. I'm just good at 15. Thanks, but no thanks. But he also says, as a diehard Tigers fan, I can tell you he's going to be the next great one in a long line of LSU defensive backs. You may be right. You may be absolutely spot on there. I'm good at 15 on a corner, though. And that's not a Greedy Williams thing. That's not a DeAndre Baker thing. You know, that's not a Byron Murphy thing. That's a Louie T doesn't want a corner at 15 thing. That's all that is. Again, if that's the best player available, I'll just have to suck it up and take my medicine. I don't want to take that medicine, though. So, there's that. Matthew123, thank you for leaving it in the comment section. Of Rosen, remember, he gave us the comment earlier that he thinks the Redskins are going to trade for Rosen based off of a comment he made in Sports Illustrated. Here's the comment. He says, quote, I want nothing more than to be a part of a team where I can have an opportunity and compete. Close quote. He says, where else could he compete for a starting job other than Washington? There are a bunch of places where he can do that. But you're right. Most likely if a team's trading for Josh Rosen, it'll be in New England. It'll be in Los Angeles with the Chargers, a team where there's already established quarterback in place where he's going to have to sit and wait. Like you said, Washington is one of the few places, along with places like Miami and Cincinnati. He could probably compete there as well. New York with the Giants, probably not going to compete there, but it's imminent. You know, the end is near for Eli Manning. But if you're just going off of what he said, if you're taking what he said at face value, Washington is one of about maybe 3 or 4 places where you can legitimately have a chance to compete this season to be a starter in 2019. So on that merit alone, you're right. Washington is one of the few places he'll get an opportunity to be able to do that. All right. I'm going to stop right there on the comment section, and I'm going to jump into my 7-round mock draft. So let's take a look at the Redskins picks and selections, and we'll go through these picks in order, and I'll give you what I think the Redskins are ultimately going to do in this draft. So let's go through the Redskins draft, and I'll tell you what I think the Redskins are ultimately going to do. So we're going to start with the 15th overall selection, which is the Redskins' first-round pick. Obviously, this is barring the Redskins, and I'm not including trades here. It's very possible that the Redskins trade back. We've seen them do that each of the past 2 seasons, where they trade back in the draft and pick up draft capital. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. We've seen them do it before. They could easily do it again. But in any event, in the first round, I don't think they're going to get a quarterback that falls to them that they like. Obviously, Daniel Jones is a wild card. If they like Daniel Jones, I think he'll be there at 15. I pray that they don't want Daniel Jones at 15. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. But at 15, I've got the Redskins selecting edge rusher out of Florida State, Brian Burns, with that selection. I think the Redskins, I talked to you about the roster, and I told you I was going to rehash that. If you watch my third part of the Redskins series, off-season playbook, then you know that the Redskins currently only have 3 outside linebackers, 3 edge rushers that are realistic options to make the roster. There are about 3 or 4 more guys that are technically on the roster because it's been expanded to 90, but those other guys aren't going to make the Redskins' final roster. Right now, you're looking at Ryan Anderson, Ryan Kerrigan, and Mackenzie Casanova. Or Casanova McKenzie, excuse me. That's it. We don't have anything else at edge rusher. I think if you're going to strike in a deep edge rush class, go ahead and get yours now. Don't wait and say, oh, it's a deep class, and wait till the second round, and then all the guys are gone. All right? Get yours while it's there to be got. You want speed? You want a guy that's dynamic off the edge? Sure, he's not a force in the run game. We don't need him to be. We got plenty of guys that can stop the run. Ryan Anderson can stop the run. Ryan Kerrigan can stop the run. We need a guy on 3rd and 7 that comes off the edge, guns a-blazing, hair on fire, trying to get to the quarterback. Brian Burns will provide us with that. I'll take him. And he has versatility. You saw him at the combine. You saw the way he moved. The guy is a great athlete. I'll take some Brian Burns at number 15. We move along to the second round, 46th overall selection. This is a guy that has grown on me as I've watched him through this process. He's grown on me more and more, and I think this guy comes in and immediately fits a need. I like Darnell Savage Jr. out of Maryland as the Redskins' second-round selection, the safety out of Maryland. Here's a guy that is right around 5'10", 5'11", as a free safety. I think that this guy has the versatility to play corner, outside. With that speed, the guy ran a sub 4.4. He ran a 4.37 at the combine. With that kind of speed, he can play corner, outside. He can play nickel, which I think is going to be one of the positions, if you draft this guy, that you're going to get right away. And I think he is a phenomenal nickel. He can come inside the box and be a box safety, but also where I think he's also going to be a big get is free safety. If Landon Collins is the box safety everybody says he is, then you need a guy that can play deep single high safety. Darnell Savage can do that. But in this league, you got to be able to rock and roll your safeties. That means both safeties need to be interchangeable. Play free, play strong. And Darnell Savage gives you the type of flexibility that we just don't have right now, unless Monte Nicholson is back to 2017 form. But again, with him, you can't count on him to stay healthy either. So I'd love for the Redskins to draft a guy like Darnell Savage Jr. in the second round. And that's homegrown product out of Maryland. I'd love to see him stay in the DMV. You go to the third round. Redskins have two selections in the third round, the first of which I think you have to attack a big need on this football team at guard. You can't ignore the elephant in the room. You have to attack guard. I think this is a perfect opportunity with one of these. I don't care if you do it with the first third or the second third. One of these third round picks needs to be devoted to the offensive line and offensive guard out of Oklahoma. Drew Samia does it for me in the third round. I think he's an athletic guy that can move out in space. We know that we like to move our guards, pull them. We like to run zone. We like to do a lot of things with our guards. That makes Drew Samia's athleticism an added benefit and plus. I think he's an adequate pass blocker. I think he can be a little bit better in that department, but he can get better in that department. I think he's good enough to get it done there. I think he's a guy that you can plug and play. And so I think in the third round, Drew Samia out of Oklahoma is a good selection for the Redskins if he is still available at that point of the draft. You go to the third round. Again, this is a compensatory pick that we netted because of the Kirk Cousins free agency move last year. And so this is a guy that I think can come in and potentially help the Redskins as well in Foster Moreau. He's one of my sleepers. If you've listened to my podcast, he's one of my biggest sleepers in this draft class. A lot of people are overlooking him. Hell, I overlooked him, and he woke my ass up at the combine with his athleticism. I did not know Foster Moreau was that fast. He ran a 4.66 at the combine. He's a hell of a blocking tight end. You know, if you're at LSU, you got to block because they run it a ton. He blocked his ass off, and the guy can catch it too. He can run. Redskins need a tight end that can do both. Jay Gruden has said they need a tight end that can do both. Foster Moreau is a tight end that can do both. I like him here in the third round as a really quality selection for the Redskins at the tight end position. So to recap the first four picks, the Redskins take edge rusher Brian Burns out of Florida State in the first round at 15. At number 46, the Redskins select with their second round pick safety out of Maryland, Darnell Savage Jr. In the third round, the first of two selections for the Redskins in the third round, they take offensive guard out of Oklahoma, Drew Samia, with their first third rounder, and with their second third round pick, the Redskins select tight end Foster Moreau out of LSU. So, day number 2 is in the books of the draft, and the Redskins have come away with 2 defensive players, 2 offensive players. I like that balance. I like that mix. As we go into day 3 of the draft, we move on. No 4th round pick for the Redskins. That is not available. And so you go to the 5th round, all right? So the Redskins in the 5th round select Darius Slayton out of Auburn, wide receiver. That's a guy that can run. So here's my thought process here. At this point of the draft, the Redskins are looking for wide receiver help. There aren't many guys in this particular portion of the draft left that can run that you like. He's one of the few left that actually has some substance as a receiver that can still run. And so at this point of the draft, the Redskins are looking to acquire a little bit of size, but more importantly, speed. Speed! Here's the problem with the Redskins roster at the receiver position as constructed. If Paul Richardson isn't healthy, all right, the Redskins have zero speed on offense at the receiver position. No more Jamison Crowder takes away and Jamison wasn't a burner himself, takes away the little bit of speed we had left outside of Paul Richardson. And you look at Josh Doxson, not a burner. You look at a guy like Cam Sims that may make the roster, not a burner. Robert Davis can run. Robert Davis can't stay healthy. So there aren't many guys that you look at that are going to be a part of this Redskins roster moving forward that can run. And so when you look at the receiver position, Trey Quinn, not a burner. You need to add speed. I think a guy like Darius Slayton does that out of Auburn. That's the Redskins' 5th round selection at 153. You go to the Redskins' next 5th round selection, 2 of them. This is 173rd overall. The Redskins are going to select offensive lineman Bo Benshaw. Now, this is a Wisconsin product here in the 5th round. You double down on offensive guard. I told you on part 3 of the Redskins series offensive playbook that after Brandon Sheriff, do you trust any of the other 5 guards that are currently on the roster? Yes or no? Because I can run the list down for you right now. All right. The other 4 guards on the roster: Tyler Catalina, all right, Selassie Utafe, Kyle Fuller, and Zach Kieran. Do you trust any of those other 4 offensive guards? If the answer is yes, then we don't need another guard. If the answer is no, which I'm thinking for most of you the answer is no, then you need to double down on guard. All right. And you also need more depth at center. So you need to draft 2 guys, one of which can double as a center, and Bo Benshaw can do that. So I don't have a problem with the Redskins doubling down. You've ignored guard for too long. How about you double down on it in this year's draft? I think that's a smart thing to do. I think you get another quality guy that can come in and help you in a pinch right away, but he offers you depth in the immediate to short-term future, and I like that about Bo Benshaw. And again, he played at Wisconsin, so you know they ran the football. You know he was coached well. I like Bo Benshaw in the 5th round for the Redskins here. So now we move to the 6th round, where the Redskins have a selection there, and you look at the pick for the Redskins in the 6th round, and it is linebacker Drew Tranquill out of Notre Dame. So when you look at the Redskins roster and you look at the inside linebacker position, it's an intriguing position because Mason Foster is still on the roster. Will he remain on the roster? I don't know. All right, remember he had the comments last year where he lashed out. The Redskins can save money by cutting Mason Foster. I don't think they cut him yet because they didn't know what was going to happen to Reuben Foster in his situation. Well, Reuben Foster wasn't suspended. Now, if you can land a guy that you like that provides you with depth in this draft at linebacker, maybe Mason Foster becomes a guy that you can move on from. I think they like Reuben Foster, Sean Dion Hamilton, and Josh Harvey Clemens. You'd like to add more speed there, and a guy that could do that for you in the mid to late rounds is linebacker Drew Tranquill. Me being a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, I can tell you that he's tough as nails. He's a better athlete than people give him credit for. He's a little undersized, but in today's NFL, that's all right. And so I like Drew Tranquill a lot. Offers you some special teams value as well. Think he's a guy that can come in and help fill a void as a special teams player and depth at linebacker for the Redskins. As we move on to the second of the Redskins' 6th round selections, and you look at this next pick, edge rusher Porter Gustin out of USC. Now, the Redskins have shown the ability and the fearlessness to take players, and this is a gift and a curse because generally with the Redskins, they don't mind taking flyers on injured players. We've seen that in the case of Sean Dion Hamilton last year. You take a late round flyer on a guy with talent, but with a little bit of an injury history, and you hope that he stays healthy. Porter Gustin is a guy that a lot of people looked at USC as the next Clay Matthews. His problem was he couldn't stay healthy, and he had a myriad of injuries. He's had a broken ankle. He's had issues with his neck. He's had a number of different problems. But when the guy's on the field, he's highly productive. And even though he only played in like 6 games last year, he had 7 sacks before he broke his ankle. The guy can get to the quarterback. He's talented. His draft stock is going to plummet because of his injury history. You can get some value here in the 6th round with Porter Gustin. I like this guy, and if the Redskins are smart, I told you we only had 3 edge rushers coming into the draft. Much like guard, you need to double down on the edge rushing position. And here is some really good value with a guy that, if healthy, could provide you with a little bit of juice off the edge in Porter Gustin out of USC. And finally, wrapping up my 7-round mock draft for the Redskins in the 7th round is wide receiver Johnny Dixon out of the Ohio State University. All this is taking a flyer on a speed guy. And I told you, speed is what Jay Gruden is after. Again, this offense, and I don't know if you guys noticed, the offense wasn't great at any point last year, but it went to hell in a handbasket in terms of stretching the field vertically once we lost Paul Richardson. The best game of the season offensively for the Redskins, coincidentally enough, was the best game of the season for Paul Richardson, which was the Green Bay Packers game when he caught the big touchdown. And that might have been his only catch of the game, but it was a big catch. And we couldn't stretch teams vertically after he got injured. We need more speed offensively. A guy like Johnny Dixon that's not going to cost you a bunch, 7th round, take a flyer, running a 4.33, 4.36, or whatever he ran. I think it was a 4.39 at the combine. Either way, the guy can fly. He was a deep threat at Ohio State. Why not take a flyer on a guy that can run and give you more team speed offensively if he's able to make the roster? I like Johnny Dixon. You can do some things with Johnny Dixon. Johnny Dixon can return punts and kickoffs. Remember, we really don't have a guy necessarily unless you really like the Virginia Tech corner Stroman as a punt returner. You could use more depth at those positions as well. Johnny Dixon fits a bunch of needs on this football team, including adding more vertical speed. So, to recap my 7-round mock for the Redskins, 1st round, edge rusher out of Florida State, Brian Burns is the 15th overall selection for the Redskins. As you get to the 2nd round, 46th overall, Maryland safety Darnell Savage Jr. is the pick. And then you go to the 3rd round, Drew Samia out of Oklahoma, the guard, is the pick at 76 for the Redskins. You go to the next 3rd round selection, our compensatory pick, 96th overall. The Redskins select tight end Foster Moreau out of LSU as a blocking / receiving tight end to give Jay Gruden some of the balance he's lacking at the tight end position. Go to the 5th round. The Redskins select wide receiver Darius Slayton out of Auburn to give the Redskins more speed at the receiver position. The 5th round pick, 173rd overall, the Redskins select offensive guard Bo Benshaw out of Wisconsin to double down on the guard position in a draft that isn't very deep at interior offensive line, but you get value in the 5th round with Bo Benshaw. In the 6th round, the Redskins select linebacker Drew Tranquill out of Notre Dame with the 206th overall pick. You go to the 7th round, Redskins have 2 selections, the first of which they spend on USC edge rusher Porter Gustin, a guy that can get to the quarterback, just needs to stay healthy. And the Redskins wrap up their draft with the 253rd pick. And that's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last pick in the draft in wide receiver Johnny Dixon out of Ohio State. Another Blazer that can run. So, that's my 7-round mock. We'll get back to the comment section, see what you guys have to say, and see what you guys think about my mock. And so, let's get back to the comment section. I'll try to pick up where I left off. And I think I left off at my man JP. And I'm trying to see where I was right here. JP says, Ben Banagoo out of TCU would be a nice pick in the 4th or 5th round. I also like Deontay Thompson out of Alabama in the 3rd round to solidify our safety core. So I thought about Ben Banagoo right around the 4th round. Guess what? We don't have a 4th round pick. So that's why he wasn't selected. I looked at him. I don't think he'll be around in the 5th round. I don't want to pull the trigger on Ben Banagoo in the 3rd round. I think good value for him is in the 4th round. Well, we don't have a 4th round selection, so that's why he didn't get selected. Deontay Thompson would make a lot of sense for the Redskins in the 2nd round because he's an Alabama safety. I want to go away from Alabama and get a guy that is highly skilled and athletic in Darnell Savage Jr., but it wouldn't shock me if the Redskins continued on with this Alabama trend and took Deontay Thompson in the 2nd round if he's around at that pick. Yin Yang Domain says, I'm like you. I like Locke's arm, but it would not be nice to see Greedy line up on the other side of... He said, but wouldn't it be nice to see Greedy line up on the other side of Norman? I wouldn't... Again, I'm not opposed to it. That's just not my preference. I don't want the Redskins selecting a corner at 15, but if they do, again, if Greedy is as good as advertised, as everyone says, I've watched him on tape. I like him. I don't necessarily love him. I like him. He can be a little handsy down the field, but I wouldn't have a problem with it. But again, I feel like there are other pressing needs that the Redskins can select at 15 that not only meet a need, but also are talented football players. So again, I don't want to reach for a position of need over talent. If Greedy Williams is the highest player on your board and the next highest guy is a reach, then take Greedy Williams. Carson M. Truth Seeker says, I saw Mel Kiper pick Marquise Brown to the Redskins in his mock show tonight. What do you think? I wouldn't have a problem with that. Again, the only thing that scares me is injury with him. He's a smaller, diminutive guy. He's coming off of Liz Frank surgery. That's not good. But if he's healthy, he's Deshaun Jackson 2.0. So, again, that's what the game is missing in Washington. The element of speed and being able to stretch the field vertically. You got to have a quarterback that can get guys the football vertically. I don't know if that guy exists on the roster right now. But that's why I selected 2 guys in this draft with speed. So I wouldn't be opposed to Marquise Brown. Hollywood! JP says, could Alabama linebacker Mack Wilson be in play in the later rounds? I've heard he's the big mystery player in this draft. Again, he's an Alabama player, so you know he's definitely in play with the Skins. That being said, I'm not too high on Mack Wilson. He's solid, but he doesn't really move the needle for me. So, and when you say the later rounds, I can't see this guy being around past the mid rounds, 3rd, 4th, somewhere in there. He's probably going to come off the board. Yin Yang Domain says, would you trade down and possibly get J.J. Arcega-Whiteside or Lindstrom in the 2nd if we could trade down for a 2nd rounder? So I love J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He ran a sub 4.5 at his pro day. We know he can go up and get the football, or as he calls it, taking it off the rim. He's a guy that is very intriguing. I like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I don't know if he necessarily fits for what the Redskins need per se, but for what J.J. Arcega-Whiteside does, that's what the Redskins thought Josh Doxson was going to provide for us. A guy that could go up and get the football in tight coverage, but out-leap the guy next to him and go get the football. I don't think they want another one of those guys. They feel like Doxson is already one of those guys. And so I think they want somebody with more speed. And so I just don't see if J.J. Arcega-Whiteside fits that mold for them. But Lindstrom is very interesting, the offensive guard out of Boston College. He was a guy that I considered in the 2nd round. I just don't think he's going to be there for the Redskins pick in the 2nd round at 46. I just don't think that he'll be around at 46 for the Redskins. I think he'll be gone by then. So that's why I went safety in that particular spot. And really, to me, the sweet spot for a guard, if you're not going to get one in the 1st round, it's the third round for the Redskins. You got 2 third-rounders. I think guard should be a priority in the third round, preferably the first of those 2 third-rounders. If there isn't other value that you see there that is attainable, I think guard is where you should start to really, target in the third round. Just Andre says, which pass rusher you like more, Burns or Ja'Kai Polite? I'm a Burns guy, personally, because of his versatility. With Ja'Kai Polite, there's issues with his weight. At one point he was playing in the 240s, the high 240s, 241, 239, somewhere in there. Then he tried to put on weight to show that he could stop the run, and he got up to like 258 or so. He looked sluggish. He didn't look like the same guy. So you got to find that happy medium with him. With Burns put on 15 pounds at the combine and came in at 253 and didn't look any slower, any worse for the wear. So that lets me know he can play at 253. And I think his frame can still stand to gain another 5 to 7 pounds. He may ultimately get up to 260, still be athletically gifted, still be able to turn the corner, and also drop into coverage and move. You saw him catch the football, snatch it out of the air. He's so versatile. He's not just an edge rusher. That's why I like Brian Burns at 15. Ryan Heath says, what do you think of Trey Quinn? I'm actually excited for him. I like Trey Quinn. I think that the future is bright for Trey Quinn. He's just got to stay healthy. I think he's going to be the new Jamison Crowder in this offense. He can win in the slot. I think Jay Gruden really likes what he provides. I think the Redskins organization likes what he provides. Jay Gruden reportedly still wanted Jamison Crowder back. But I think the Redskins allowed Crowder to walk because they think that Trey Quinn can fill that void left by Jamison Crowder. John Saluter says, I want to go to the Skins-Panthers game since I live in North Carolina and I've never been to a game, but I know it's going to be a shit show. You're probably right. If you feel compelled to go to a game and you're in Carolina, and this may be one of the few times that the Redskins are in Carolina, I say knock yourself out, man. You're not putting any money into Daniel Snyder's pocket. And I actually like the Panthers owner, so I don't see any problems there. But it's probably going to be a shit show. You're probably right. It's probably going to be an ass kicking. We're going to be on the wrong end of it, and it may get ugly. Like the last time we were in Carolina, when it got really ugly. Phil Pierre Louie says, how do you feel about Minnesota linebacker Blake Cashman? Blake blew me away at the combine with his 40 time. He ran, I believe, a sub 4.6. I think he ran in that 4.57 area, somewhere in there. Anyway, he ran a lot faster than people expected. I thought he looked good in the drills, moved well. He's a guy that's a magnet to the football. I like Blake Cashman a lot. I actually contemplated selecting him in this draft. I think he's going to be in that 4th to 5th round range, and the Redskins don't have a 4th round pick. In the 5th round, I think the Redskins hadn't taken a receiver yet, and so that's why I mocked them a receiver there. I thought about Blake Cashman, though. It's funny that you ask about him because he was one of the guys that I seriously considered in the 5th round with that first 5th round pick. JP says, I heard about a month ago the Redskins have some interest in Ed Oliver at 15. They can't possibly think that drafting another interior defensive lineman is a good idea. If they think so, they need to wash their face and get their mind right. Even though I really like Ed Oliver. He's got a high motor and he can rush the quarterback, but we're good at the defensive line. I agree. Ryan Heath says, laughing my ass off, I feel you. I only asked for one win against Dallas. Just don't let us get swept by the Cowboys. You know how that goes. Boba Sis says, 5-11, what up, man? 5-11, here we come, LOL. He says, shaking my head. Wow, after looking at our schedule, sheesh. Man, how the hell do we come up with 5 wins for us? Again, you know in the NFL how it goes. You win 2 or 3 games. Usually it's around 2. You have no business winning, even when you're not a good team. You're going to luck into 2 more wins. That's 4. You're going to win at least 1 or 2 in the division. That's how you get to 5 or 6. JP says, not draft related, but do you think guys will be worked into our lineup slowly with Adrian Peterson returning with, or will the coaches let him run loose early? It's still Adrian Peterson's show. but Geis is going to get touches. It's going to be a split backfield, and you still got to work in CT as well. So the way I look at it, AD is going to get 15 to 17 carries. Geis is going to get 10 to 12 if the Redskins are running the football effectively. And then you're going to see CT get his 7 to 10 touches as well. That's preferably how this thing would go. But again, it could easily be the hot hand type of situation where if AD has it going one game and he's ripping off runs, making guys miss like he had games last year against Arizona, against Tennessee, for instance. You know, there were games where he was a man-child and a man-possessed. If he has games like that where he's got it going and you see that early, then, you know, maybe he gets 21 carries and Geis only gets 7. You know, it could happen. But I expect Geis to get touches. James Janica says, the Skins need to add speed all over the offense. I'd like to see them draft 2 wide receivers with 4.4 speed or better and a third down back to come in and compete with CT. Bryce Love in the 5th. That'd be interesting. I don't think Bryce is going to fall that far. I think Bryce is going to go in the 4th round. That injury is going to drop him, but I think someone knows that Bryce has speed, and that I think he'll come off the board in the 5th round or 4th round, excuse me. But I don't disagree with anything you've said. That's why I gave the Redskins 2 receivers that run sub 4.5, one runs sub 4.4. So I would like you agree the Redskins need to add more speed. Absolutely, both sides of the football. See, DMV123 says, DMV fan 123 says, naive Lou mocking Darnell to the Skins. You know they're not evaluating safeties that don't play at Alabama, laughing my ass off. You're so right. You're so right. If any safety is coming to the Redskins in the 2nd round, it's going to be Deontay Thompson. It's not going to be Darnell Savage. Silly Lou. Maryland safety are for every other team not named Redskins. I should know better. I should know better, but let me dream. It's my mock draft. Let me dream my dream, right? Don't shit on my dream, all right? Let's see. Let me go back up to the rest of these comments. James Janica says, I'd rather have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the 2nd. I like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Very versatile. Again, another guy that plays the free safety position that can drop over the slot. Played a lot of slot at Florida. I'm intrigued by him. I like Darnell Savage's versatility and ability to run a little bit better. He's a lot more athletic than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But I understand it. Sometimes you don't want to get too caught up in the athleticism because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a hell of a football player. My cup of tea, though, is Darnell Savage. So, but Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you couldn't go wrong with either one. I like my guy better, but again, I wouldn't have a problem with Chauncey Gardner either. Matthew123 says, Burns and Savage added to this defense looks like top 5 to me. Love both of those guys. Look, I feel like both of those guys add immediate speed to a defense that's thirsty for more speed. Landon Collins adds more speed. Reuben Foster adds more speed. You look at what the Redskins, if you get, and I'm not saying that that's what the Redskins are going to do, but you add that kind of speed in addition to the speed we added this offseason, and we stay relatively healthy defensively like we did last year. Remember, the only real injury we had defensively last year was to Quentin Dunbar. All right, Dunny went down with the injury, and that really affected us. It hurt us in the secondary. We got toasted and roasted in the secondary. But if we stay relatively healthy defensively like we did last year, with all the speed we've added this offseason, if you add 2 speedsters like Savage, like Brian Burns, man, this defense could look vastly different in 2019. Let's see. Wahoo Brad 24 says, do we trade Jordan Reed if we take a tight end in the 3rd round? And Boshaw would be a steal in the 5th round. No, Jordan Reed isn't going anywhere. And the guy that would be on the outs, if we took a tight end early in this draft, would be Vernon Davis. I think he's owed $5 million you would save, $4 million, somewhere in there you would save by getting rid of Vernon Davis. Jordan Reed, still a viable option in this offense. He's not going anywhere. Let's see. John Perez says, I actually want to give us Jordan Reed at least one more chance to be healthy and productive for us. He played 13 games last year, which was a good amount. That's all you can ask for from Jordan Reed is 13 games. You get 13 out of him, you feel good. It was just a tough year for him. Alex Smith and him never really got on the same page. Offensively, it was a shit show. It really was. So, it was hard for him to have the kind of success you'd like to see from him. Let's see. Atlas says, good draft, Lou. Are you thinking it might be future picks for Rosen instead of this year? If Redskins traded for Rosen, I told you what I think the package would be. I think it would be this year's second, next year's third, this year's fifth. That would be the package I think the Redskins would be willing to offer. Because Redskins have 2 fifth-rounders this year. You give up one of those. You give up the second round, which we don't do a good job of drafting in the second round. The history is long. It's bad in the second. I could go on and on about the guys we've drafted in the second round in recent history. It's been bad. Going all the way back to the 2008 draft when we had 3 second-rounders, and it was Devin Thomas, it was Fred Davis, and it was Oklahoma wide receiver Malcolm Kelly. All 3 of them, trash. I mean, the list goes on and on, and so I could go through all the second rounders that have been failed projects for the Redskins. I wouldn't mind giving up the second rounder for Rosen. I wouldn't, but I think the Cardinals are holding out because deadline spur action, and you get to the draft, and it pushes up that immediacy. Teams start to get antsy. And you could see the Patriots, you could see the Chargers be willing to part with the first-round pick for Josh Rosen. All right? And because right now I don't think anyone's willing to give them a first-round pick. The Giants aren't willing to give them a first-round pick. The Redskins, I don't think, are willing to give them a first-round pick. The Redskins may not even be willing to give them a second. You heard what Kurt Warner said. I mean, that's an indictment. Kurt Warner, who lives in Arizona, who is an Arizona Cardinals follower and a guy that is a staunch supporter of the Cardinals organization, said he wouldn't give up anything more than a third for Josh Rosen. That is an indictment, okay? So I think the Cardinals are trying to wait out this process. They want to first make sure that someone doesn't come up with some ridiculous package like 3 first-round picks for the right to draft Kyler Murray at 1. Like, if somebody comes at them, like, say the Raiders say, all right, we'll give you all 3 of our first-rounders this year, so we can get up to number 1 for Kyler Murray. If the Raiders say that, how can you turn that down? You can't. You have to take that. So they're waiting to make sure that somebody doesn't come out of the woodworks with a ridiculous package. If no one does, they're taking Kyler Murray at 1. That's the way I feel. And then once they get Murray, now you start fielding offers for Josh Rosen. I think that's how that goes. Anyway, let's see. JP says, what kind of gas do you think Buckeyes coaching staff give their receivers? Those MFers are faster than a damn Ferrari. I look, man, that's what kind of athletes they just recruit there. When you're a big Power 5 powerhouse like Ohio State, you get the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme. Herb was there. Herb is a master recruiter. It's going to be interesting to see what that university looks like without Herb there recruiting for them. But they get the pick of the litter. When you're Ohio State, when you're Clemson, when you're Alabama, you get the pick of the litter. Robert Gamble says, I heard that they're interested in trading up for Haskins. We talked about that earlier tonight. It's a very distinct possibility. I think Daniel Snyder wants to make a splash at the quarterback position. I honestly think the Redskins, I gave you my 7-round mock. That doesn't mean that I don't think the Redskins are going to come away with the quarterback. I think Daniel Snyder wants a quarterback in the worst way, and I really feel like the Redskins are going to make a concerted effort. Doesn't mean that something's going to happen, but I think they're going to make a concerted effort to try to come away with a quarterback in the 2019 NFL Draft. John Perez says, I like speed receivers, but preferably I want Michael Thomas type of receiver who's 6'5" and can just leap up and grab the football in midair. Again, that's what Josh Doctson was supposed to be for the Redskins. I think they want speed. I think they look at Cam Sims as a 6'5" receiver that potentially could help as a big size type of receiver. I think they look at Robert Davis as another guy right around 6'2", 6'3". If he can stay healthy, as a guy that could potentially have some size at the receiver position. I think they look at the receivers that they have already in-house, and they say we don't have enough team speed. And I think that's where they look to add speed. John Perez also says, I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about this season because of how good our defense can be, as well as thunder and lightning of Peterson and Geis. I hear you. JP says, would wide receiver Hakeem Butler of Iowa be a good pick at 15? No, way too early for him. Again, you know my mantra, you know my motto. Get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. If that's the Redskins guy, take him. But 15 is way too early for Hakeem Butler, if you ask me. If you were to trade back, let's say the Redskins trade back to 24 in the first round. Maybe the Raiders want to come up to 15. They like a guy. They trade back with the Redskins. Redskins pick up an additional, pick up that first and an additional third, or they get a fourth rounder. They don't have a fourth rounder. And I don't know what the draft chart says equal value would be to move back 9 spots. But let's say you move back to 24. Then a guy like Hakeem Butler, let's say that the Packers take a receiver, take DK Metcalf, and that starts the run on receivers. And then AJ and Nikhil go within the next 6 picks before the Redskins select, and they want Hakeem Butler. I wouldn't have a problem with that at 24, but still think that he's a second-round receiver when it's all said and done. Derek B says, sup, Lou? Skins should trade for number 1 overall. He said, plus second-round picks in 2019, 2020, and 2021, and 2022, and draft Kyler Murray. We suck at drafting in the second round anyway. While I understand your grief and your gripe with the Redskins in the second round, you can't possibly give up the next 4 second-round drafts. You can't do that. And the first rounder, you can't do it. You can't do it. JP says, how many interceptions do you think Landon Collins will have in his first season? I've got him getting 6 to 8. I would love to see him pick off Kirk and Brady. That's a lot of interceptions for a guy that I don't think has ever had that many in one season in his career. There was his second year in the league, I believe it was, where he had, I think, 4 or 5 that year. I don't think he's ever had 6. He might have had 6 that year, but in any event, he's not picking off 8 passes. He's not picking off 6 passes. The most I see him getting is 3 in his first year with the Redskins. JP also says, I know we're not going to get another Sean Taylor, but I would like to see us one day get a safety who hits as hard as he did, even though 21 was a different breed. There will never be another Sean Taylor, and it is what it is, bottom line. So there it is. Let's see. Got some more comments. Derek B says, seriously, I know this is not your philosophy, but our only chance is to tank for 2019 and take a shot at Tua or Lawrence if he comes out. Anything else is just treading water. We're never bad enough to get one of those guys. And you can't tank in the NFL. The Redskins, they're already declining in fan appeal as it is. They can't afford a 3-13, 2-14 season. That's what it's going to take to get a Tua or and I don't even know if Lawrence is eligible to come out. Was he a true freshman last year? I think he was a true freshman. I don't think he redshirted. So in any event, Tua is the guy that everybody's after. But we'll see what Tua does this year. I generally try to stay away from guys that have been hyped for more than 2 years in college football, because as the years pass, you start to cool off on those guys. You know, same thing happened with Jarvis Jones once upon a time. When he was supposed to be the number 1 overall pick. Same thing with Ed Oliver. You know, these guys generally cool the hell off. So, well, we'll see what happens. Redskins 24/7 says, you think Case Keenum could be a part of the package in a trade for Rosen? Keenum has connections with Cliff Kingsbury. Anything's possible, but Bruce Allen is patting himself on the back for acquiring Case Keenum for a paltry $3.5 million. Do you really think he's going to include him in any trade package? I don't think that's the case. I just don't see it happening. If anybody would be involved, it'd be Colt McCoy. But again, the Cardinals would have to want Colt McCoy. Yes, Case Keenum has Cliff Kingsbury ties. It makes a lot of sense. But again, if the Cardinals wanted Case Keenum, they would have just traded for him straight up. They didn't need to facilitate the Redskins in a deal to get him. All right. They don't need to trade, have the Redskins toss him into a trade to sweeten the deal. If they wanted Case Keenum, they could have sent a 6th-round pick to Denver and got Case Keenum themselves. So I don't think he's a part of any package for Josh Rosen. They signed a quarterback, Brett Hundley, who is a great fit for what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do, which is why I think they're going to get, and I talked about this on my podcast, why they're going to draft Kyler Murray even more so. You don't go get him as a backup quarterback. Brett Hundley, that is, as a backup quarterback, if you're not drafting Kyler Murray, because Josh Rosen and Brett Hundley have 2 entirely different skill sets. They're not one and the same. So that's, to me, further proof that Kyler Murray is the number 1 pick overall. JP says, I think Case could have some good chemistry with Reed because he likes his tight ends. He made some good magic with Kyle Rudolph in Minnesota. It could happen. It could happen. But we will see. Bottom line is, that's how I see the Redskins draft playing out. We've got more time to discuss. I may do one more live stream in case things change between now and Thursday. We'll see what happens. But in any event, you know how I feel. Check out the podcast, Louie T Network podcast, available on Stitcher, Google Music Play, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, and of course the website, louietnetwork.net. If you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network on YouTube. Subscribe to my podcast if it is available on your platform that you get your podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode of the Louie T Network podcast. Also rate the podcast. All right. Leave me a comment. Give me feedback. All of these things help in the ranking of my podcast when it comes to a sports podcast on these different platforms. I thank you guys for joining me. Can't wait. Also join me for the 2019 NFL draft party. We'll watch it live together. We'll break down every selection. I'll give you comps for these players that are selected in the first round, day 1. I'm also going to have a day 2 draft party. We'll break down the selections in rounds 2 and 3 as well. So join me, your man, Louie T, as we chop it up, watch the draft, kick it, laugh, and share some good times here on the Louie T Network watching the 2019 NFL Draft. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. I will see you guys next week. More draft videos coming out. I'll be releasing more draft prospect 101 videos as we near the draft. So keep your eyes peeled for that. 2 more podcasts coming your way tomorrow. So keep your ears open for that as well. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. If it's not your man, T, it's not the best NFL coverage. It could be. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.